The Star Soul General stood firm as his energy dissipated. It seemed to be the end of his solitary journey. With a solemn gesture, he focused his remaining power. The old warrior prepared for the final sacrifice. Facing tens of thousands of enemies emerging from the rifts, he decided to perish with them. Below, the crowd celebrated, believing they were saved, unaware of the price of that victory. Destruction was inevitable. The war zone consumed everything around it, leaving only ruins and smoke. However, the vision changed. The smoke now rose amidst a technological city, a stark contrast to the previous desolation. A rift opened in reality, and a voice echoed calling for Song Yunxiang. Something unexpected forced him to awaken from his trance. Memories of the invasion mixed with the confusion of the present. He wondered how he had suddenly returned to his youth as the sky broke apart. He surveyed the city around him, trying to get his bearings. The architecture and lights indicated that he was far from the battlefield where he had died. The sky crackled with energy. The transition between realities was marked by violent lightning. Song Yunxiang opened his eyes, feeling dazed. He was lying on the ground, trying to comprehend the sudden change of scenery. Upon facing the mirror, the shock was immediate. He didn't see the veteran general, but a young man wearing a school uniform. He recognized the cityscape before him. In disbelief, he realized he was in Yuanding City, in Nanzhou, a place from his past. Around him, the atmosphere was one of celebration and rivalry. Students from Class 7 shouted and cheered, full of youthful energy. The crowd watched a training combat between mechs. Blades crossed under the applause of the students, who vibrated with the demonstration of strength. But the peace was suddenly interrupted. The sky tore open again, and fierce beasts began to emerge, bringing terror back to reality. He recalled the ranks of armored warriors who once marched. They were elite fighters, trained for war. Those soldiers lived and died in battle, facing colossal beasts without hesitation. They fought to the death, sacrificing everything to protect their home from imminent destruction. However, at that time, Song Yunxiang felt powerless. He clenched his fists as he remembered being seen as trash due to his incomplete soul veins. The general bitterly recalled how he could only watch his allies die, unable to do anything to save them. But now, faced with destruction, he vowed that all those regrets would be transformed. The old weakness would give way to a new strength, rewriting the destiny that seemed sealed. Song Yunxiang realized that he had been reborn. He now possessed the tactical knowledge and accumulated experience of 60 years of war. The painful memories returned. The rejection of his own family, who expelled him for his spiritual disability to preserve the clan. He heard the echoes of taunts from old rivals, who laughed at his weakness and predicted his eternal defeat. He also remembered the woman he loved, forced to abandon him because her family would not allow marriage to a broken soul. The most painful image emerged, her lifeless body in his arms, something he lost because he wasn't strong enough in the past. Back in the present, the young man pointed his finger furiously, challenging anyone who questioned his identity. With a crystal shining in his hand, he announced his return. Song Yunxiang was back, ready to use his second chance. The setting was the northern continent in the year 1390, a world marked by devastation under an apocalyptic sky. Chaos took over the technological city. Cries for help echoed through the streets as the invasion began. The beasts showed no mercy. Civilians were captured like dolls, powerless against the overwhelming force of the invaders. It was a Taoti, a voracious creature. The monster devoured everything it found, treating human lives as mere food. Its hunger seemed insatiable. The beast tore its prey apart with brutality, capable of consuming volumes much larger than its own body. Panic spread quickly. The crowd ran desperately, trampling each other in an attempt to escape the approaching nightmare. In the midst of the confusion, a child lost his balance. The boy fell to the hard ground, calling for his mother amidst the terror. The woman heard the scream and stopped. Fear etched her face as she realized her son had been left behind. Ignoring the imminent danger, she ran back. The mother tried to lift the boy hurriedly, knowing that every second was vital. However, the escape was blocked. The gigantic shadow of the beast covered them both, cornering them with no chance of escape. The monster prepared the final attack. Its claws descended violently, ready to crush the fragile lives below. With nowhere to go, the woman shielded her son with her own body. She hugged him tightly, awaiting the inevitable end. Tears streamed down her face. In her moment of greatest despair, she silently begged for a miracle to save them. The creature's fist descended, promising total destruction upon hitting the ground. Suddenly, a beam of light cut through the air. A powerful energy intercepted the attack with surgical precision before the worst could happen. The impact was devastating. The Taotie was hurled away by the force of the blast, colliding against the rubble and saving the family at the last instant. The mother hugged her son tightly, barely able to believe that imminent death had been averted at the last second. Even the voracious beasts interrupted their attack, distracted by a menacing presence rising above them. Beams of energy plummeted from the skies, like lethal rain, striking the creatures with devastating accuracy. A colossal blade plunged into the ground, creating a physical and symbolic barrier between the helpless civilians and the monsters. The impact released a brilliant shockwave, repelling the darkness and announcing the arrival of a superior power. Floating above the chaos, a warrior in golden armor descended, commanding an arsenal of flying swords that orbited around him. The mother's terror turned to hope as she recognized the legendary figure hovering above them, the savior they were all waiting for. The energy blades continued their work, destroying the rubble and clearing the path with impressive speed. Amidst the ruins, the survivors raised their arms in celebration, hailing the arrival of the one who represented the future of humanity. The armored general remained suspended in the air, a golden sentinel whose mere presence inspired courage in desperate hearts. The city burned with flames and smoke, but the destruction now seemed insignificant in the face of the power that had just manifested. As the buildings crumbled, in the background, attention turned to the interior of that divine war machine. Inside the armor, however, an elderly man was revealed, his face marked by time and the effort of controlling such power. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted the controls, but his determination remained unwavering as he reaffirmed his identity. The veteran knew he was the last warrior remaining, fighting against the exhaustion of his soul to keep humanity alive for one more day. The impact was brutal and immediate. The blue energy cut the ferocious beast, interrupting its attack before it could cause more damage. A multi-armed abomination loomed over the city, threatening everything. However, the Guardian reaffirmed his sacred duty to protect humanity's last bastion within the barrier. The Golden Warrior moved with impressive speed. His figure cut through the air, preparing to intercept the next threat with determination. Beams of light exploded from the monster. The counterattack was devastating, piercing the creature's defenses in multiple points, simultaneously. On the ground, panic consumed the crowd. Civilians screamed for help, paralyzed by terror and convinced that there was no escape from this imminent destruction. Suddenly, a ray of pure light descended from the heavens. The energy cut through the dark clouds, bringing sudden hope to the battlefield. The golden armor stood between the danger and the people. Activating the defense matrix, the mecha raised an impenetrable shield to save them. A dome of energy expanded instantly over the district. The barrier absorbed the devastating impact, protecting the structures and lives within. Chaos exploded against the shield, but did not penetrate it. Smoke and lightning enveloped the city, but the protection kept the danger outside. The survivors looked around, stunned. Realizing they were still alive, they questioned whether the Star Soul itself had intervened to block the fatal attack for them. However, the effort took its toll. The golden armor locked up, emitting critical alerts of power, overload, and temporary inability to move. Inside the machine, reality was fragile. Master Dongyuan gasped heavily, his elderly body struggling to endure the physical and mental exhaustion of combat. Even at his limit, the veteran maintained his discipline. With a decisive gesture, he ordered the cancellation of the technique to avoid a total collapse. The energy manifestation began to unravel. The imposing figure dissolved into particles of light and digital flames, disappearing before everyone's eyes. Now exposed, the old master focused his remaining will. Surrounded by floating talismans, he invokes the power of the Star Generals to continue the fight for him. The veteran invoked his latent power to turn the tide. With a firm mental command, he initiated the construction of the Star Soul. Fragments of light began to solidify around him. The ethereal energy quickly converted into physical matter to protect him. The technological structure grew, enveloping the pilot in a protective cocoon as he maintained absolute focus on the materialization. The armor plates closed with a metallic clang. The warrior's isolation inside the machine was complete. The unit's helmet formed and the optical sensors glowed intensely. The machine had awakened for combat. XML. At the center of the formation, the energy core stabilized. It was the throbbing digital heart of that new weapon. From that core, a gigantic silhouette expanded. Pixels of light drew the Colossus's shape in the air. The digital avatar's body gained density and purpose. The manifestation was about to become fully tangible. Real metal replaced the projected light. An armored arm emerged, displaying golden details and a robust build. The materialization descended to the machine's legs. The engineering was elegant, suggesting high mobility beyond brute strength. The thrusters and stabilizers locked into place. Each component fit perfectly to withstand the imminent combat. The Star Soul finally revealed itself completely. The white, imposing mecha hovered in the skies, emanating undeniable authority. However, the pilot demanded more from his creation. The armor began a color change, adapting to a higher level of offensive power. Amidst the rubble, the child watched the scene in awe. His eyes reflected the glow of that miraculous transformation, forgetting the fear for a moment. The final form, Cao Ren, unfolded its flaming wings. The star spirit was ready, a swift entity capable of tearing through the skies like a phoenix. The armor began to reconfigure its structure. Master Dongyuan initiated the process to change his combat tactics. The metal plates shifted violently. The transformation demanded every last drop of energy. The mechanism gained an aerodynamic shape. The machine responded precisely to the veteran's will. The thrusters ignited with full force. He was ready to take the battle to the skies. The energy culminated in the manifestation of the Phoenix Star. The new form hovered majestically, defying the darkness around it. He launched an attack of searing light against the enemies. However, the system issued a critical alert about a stealthy threat coming from the left. A monstrous maw suddenly appeared. The beast tried to swallow the entire mecha in a single voracious movement. The old pilot's eyes widened. He realized the trap an instant too late. Dark tentacles emerged and ensnared the phoenix. The ancient power that Dongyuan controlled was suddenly restrained by multiple claws. It was a fateful moment. The aerial advantage was nullified as the creature pulled the mecha down. The siege closed completely. There was no room to maneuver inside that prison of shadows. Dongyuan forced the engines to their limit. He tried to tear through the blockade with pure power, refusing to fall. The veteran reflected on his long history of survival. However, the bonds continued to tighten, testing the integrity of the armor. The crushing pressure hit the pilot physically. He screamed as he felt his strength drain away along with the machine. The phoenix form collapsed under the grip. The magnificent armor dissolved into particles of light, leaving the pilot exposed. The infestation spread through the city streets like a living plague. The enemy's tentacles tightened their grip on the urban landscape, turning buildings into a chaotic battlefield. The monstrous beast roared, sensing a sudden change in the atmosphere. However, a formidable presence descended from the skies, drawing the immediate attention of the creatures on the ground. A golden armored warrior emerged from the light, wielding an imposing spear. The arrival of that majestic mecha signaled a force capable of turning the tide against the invasion. The internal system initiated a critical transition. The pilot adjusted the energy frequency, changing the star's color to adapt the combat to the battle's new needs. The manifested entity was Bai Qi, a general known for perfect balance. Song Yunxiang knew that this form offered a lethal combination of brute strength and speed to clear the field. Beams of blue light rained down from the skies upon the enemies. The beasts on the ground found themselves cornered by a precise bombardment that left no room for escape. Moving with supernatural agility, the mecha danced between attacks. Its speed was such that it created visual trails, making it impossible for the monsters to track its movements. The pilot tightened his grip on his weapon, channeling power. He sought to replicate the original technique, forcing energy to flow through the spear for a decisive blow. Song Yongxiang reflected on his past as he attacked. Despite the lisiated soul that haunted him in his adolescence, he now wielded a legacy of destructive power against his enemies. The blow connected with the ground in a devastating explosion. The impact tore up the street, launching debris everywhere and obliterating anything in his path. He invoked the Sword of Twin Peaks, aware of the tactical limitations. The young man realized that this cloned spirit could only exert a minimal fraction of the true combat power. Suddenly, the mecha hesitated in the air. The pilot noticed a miscalculation or a failure in execution, leaving him momentarily vulnerable amidst the offensive. The enemy did not waste the opening. One of the beasts concentrated a massive amount of energy and fired a destructive beam directly at the aerial target. The energy beam collided violently with the warrior in the sky. The force of the impact was tremendous, engulfing the armor in a blinding light before any defense could be raised. A cloud of smoke and debris rose high over the city. The silence that followed the explosion left the fate of the combatant uncertain amidst the destruction. XML2 beams of energy pierced the dense smoke screen, signaling that the battle was far from over. The offensive continued relentlessly. The rays violently collided against the ground, kicking up debris and forcing the shadowy figure below to retreat. The force of the impact shook the area's foundations. Amidst the chaos, a tracking device descended, sweeping the battlefield. The system sought to identify life signatures and analyze the tactical situation. The analysis was completed, confirming the presence of General Aobeng. The imposing blue mech rose, processing the vital data of all entities within a 30-mile radius. Suddenly, the armor began to react. The pilot initiated an alteration protocol, modifying the structure and coloration of the combat suit in real time. The transformation revealed inverse scale mode. Now covered in green and red armor with draconic features, the mechanical warrior exuded overwhelming power. With offensive systems charged, the mech locked onto its target. Multiple energy orbs shone intensely, ready to unleash a coordinated attack. A rain of energetic projectiles was fired from the skies. The barrage descended with lethal precision, covering the battlefield with green light. The bombardment struck the ruined city, obliterating everything in its path. The destruction spread rapidly through the devastated urban area. Cornered by the energy storm, the monstrous beast roared in despair. The attack was too vast to be avoided, hitting the creature head-on. Floating above the destruction, the warrior prepared his final move. He decided to push the Star Soul to its limit, initiating a critical overload. The sky split as the star cannon fired. A colossal beam of light descended from the atmosphere, eclipsing any other power source on the horizon. The mech dove along with the attack, guiding the devastating energy. All force was concentrated to ensure the target was annihilated. The impact resulted in a cataclysmic explosion that engulfed the area. The destruction order was executed perfectly, pulverizing the ground and everything around it. When the blinding light subsided, only a thick cloud of dust and silence remained. However, amidst the smoking crater, a silhouette still stood. Amidst the rising dust, mechanical segments began to move. Something powerful stirred within the smokescreen, refusing to fall. An imposing spear cut through the air, manifesting itself ready for combat. The weapon awaited only its master's command to attack. The Star Soul General finally revealed his complete form. The imposing figure of Lu Bu emerged from the rubble, dominating the battlefield with his presence. Master Dongyuan pushed his spiritual power to the limit. As he fought, he recalled the hidden knowledge about civilizations he gained upon receiving the Star Master system. The physical strain was immense, He gritted his teeth, feeling the energy overflow as his elderly body struggled to withstand the excessive load. The mech responded immediately to the pilot's will. The machine's eyes glowed intensely, initiating the shift to red combat mode. The transformation completed with an explosion of power. Now coated by the star core, the mechanical general prepared to unleash his true strength, while slaughtering the beasts around him. Dong Yuan reflected on the system's revelations. He had discovered the truth about the ancient civilizations that fell in the past. Driven by this knowledge, he dove from the skies with devastating speed, aiming to crush his enemies against the ground. In the distant past, humanity had reached its technological peak. They built an advanced civilization that completely dominated the planet. To overcome their limitations, they launched millions of artificial satellites into the skies. The goal was to create a vast network of synthetic stars. This star network provided inexhaustible energy to the ancients. Now, it was this same ancestral force that propelled the mech's furious charge through the ruins. The Crimson Warrior advanced unstoppably. Energy flowed through his armor, leaving a trail of light as he cut through the battlefield. The machine's sensors suddenly focused on a new target. The pilot realized that the battle was about to shift to another level. Above the ruined city, a colossal and sinister entity descended from the skies. The smaller beasts immediately grouped together, obeying the call of that new threat. The ancestral energies began to stir, awakening forces that had slumbered for ages in the depths of the earth. Chaos engulfed the city as the defenses tried in vain to contain the overwhelming advance of destruction. In that forgotten era, humanity held absolute power. A simple snap of the fingers was enough to reshape mountains and dominate the oceans. They orchestrated reality at their will, believing themselves untouchable at the top of creation. However, the balance they maintained was more fragile than they imagined, about to collapse under the weight of their own greatness. The ambition of the ancients knew no bounds. Insatisfied with physical dominion, greed led them to try to control the forbidden laws of time and space. The price of that arrogance was paid in a devastating way. The failed experiment unleashed a catastrophe capable of annihilating all life on the planet. Glorious cities were swept away in moments, reduced to nothing more than dust and memories under the force of the explosion. Thus, that golden civilization disappeared, forgotten by the world it once ruled with an iron fist. Centuries later, on the eastern continent, new threats emerged in the skies to fill the power vacuum left by the ancients. Unlike the northern nations, which huddled behind walls, the warriors of these lands refused to live in fear. They invoked the souls of past legends. General Guan Yu emerged, ready to face the fierce beasts that plagued the world. With the determination of a war god, he channeled all his power into a decisive attack. The battle turned into a brutal war of attrition. He tore through waves of enemies, fighting tirelessly against the tide of monsters. Song Yunxiang bitterly recalled that past. He had escaped by sheer luck, condemned to live decades of exile and solitary survival. The old warrior realized the situation was critical. With the rifts emerging faster and faster, and the beasts growing stronger, he admitted to himself that he had reached his physical limit. A pillar of devastating energy struck the ground, tearing through the urban structure. The force of the impact shook the city's foundations, spreading immediate destruction. Even facing the end, he summoned the power of his star soul. The armor shone brightly, manifesting the last line of defense against the impending chaos. The effort, however, took a heavy toll. Master Dongyuan gasped, feeling every muscle in his body tremble under the extreme strain of battle. He brought his hand to his abdomen, feeling his vital energy drain away. In despair, he questioned if the effect of the soul renewal pill had already ended, leaving him vulnerable. Above him, the mechanical monstrosity hovered supreme. It accumulated a sphere of pure energy, preparing to eradicate any remaining resistance. The sky lit up with multiple lethal shots. The rain of projectiles descended on the city, aiming to turn what remained of the buildings into rubble. Refusing to yield, the golden armored warrior prepared his counterattack. He spun his blade with determination, seeking to intercept the aerial offensive. The clash of powers resulted in a violent explosion. He unleashed a wave of energy in a desperate attempt to contain the enemy's advance. However, a black and twisted spear emerged from the chaos. The swift projectile cut through the air, ignoring the surrounding turbulence to seek its target. The veteran tried to raise a defensive barrier by spinning his weapon. He concentrated the rest of his power into a vortex to deflect the deadly attack. It was useless. The enemy's spear possessed overwhelming force, shattering the warrior's defense and striking the armor with brutality. The pain was immediate and searing. Master Dongyuan clutched his shoulder, feeling the integrity of his body and his protection collapse simultaneously. Defeated, he lost his footing and began to fall. The guardian plummeted from the heavens towards the burning city, watched by the victorious beasts. As gravity pulled him into the abyss, his consciousness wavered. With his last breath, he murmured about the star that failed to protect. Master Dongyuan concentrated all his remaining power. He began the final construction of his star soul, preparing for a last decisive attack. With a mental command, he unleashed a storm of energy. Countless combat swords materialized, cutting through the skies towards the threat. The Crimson Barrage rained relentlessly on the battlefield. Each blade carried the old master's determination to eradicate the enemy. Devastating explosions lit up the firmament. The clash between Dongxuan's power and the invading forces made the air tremble violently. However, the sensors detected something worse. Superscale spatial fluctuations indicated that a massive enemy approach was about to occur. Inside the armor, the veteran felt the weight of exhaustion. The system warned that the battle needed to end before the countdown, or it would be the end of him. Suddenly, his body gave way. The master coughed up blood violently, shocked to realize that his physical resistance had reached the critical limit. As he faltered, blue lightning began to tear through the atmosphere, striking the ground with alarming frequency. The city below, already in ruins, seemed defenseless against the new energy storm that was forming over the destroyed skyscrapers. The fabric of reality tore. Dimensional rifts opened, allowing black and menacing spikes to begin to emerge. A countdown echoed. A colossal, biomechanical monstrosity forced its way through the rift, revealing its terrifying form. The creature did not come alone. As soon as the count reached 0, dozens of similar beasts emerged over the burning metropolis. The sky turned black with the swarm. The tactical system realized that the quantity was incalculable and immediately began analyzing an escape route for the host. On the ground, the evacuation became a desperate race. Guards tried to maintain order, while the terrified crowd ran to the transports. The panic increased when the vehicles reached maximum capacity. With the boats full, the pilots requested immediate departure, abandoning the chaos behind. The boy watched the sky, paralyzed by terror at the catastrophe unfolding above him. A legion of biomechanical horrors filled the horizon, blocking the light. The system warned that the evacuation opportunity for the host had been lost. Inside the armor, Master Dongyuan felt the crushing weight of exhaustion and injuries. He questioned whether it would still be possible to contain that overwhelming number of enemies. However, the tactical radar suddenly detected the presence of transport ships in the combat zone. The civilian ships were desperately trying to escape, but the system indicated that the enemy's route was converging dangerously towards them. Ekiwaye Axmal. Inside one of the ships, the passengers stared out in panic, aware that they were vulnerable to the impending attack. Dongyuan viewed the internal transmission and was shocked. He immediately recognized the mother and son he had rescued moments before. That recognition ignited a new and intense flame in his tired gaze. The veteran closed his eyes tightly, processing the gravity of the choice before him. He was exhausted from fighting alone for so many years. However, he reflected that as long as there was a spark of hope for the human race, the sacrifice would be worth it. His expression hardened with a final and unwavering determination. Remembering those to whom he entrusted the future, he asked for silent forgiveness. The system sounded a critical alarm. The host was burning his own life to generate power. A golden and violent energy exploded from the armor, ignoring the safety protocols that screamed about the mortal danger to the pilot. Master Dongyuan roared as his life force was consumed, transforming his very existence into pure power for one last attack. The sacrifice culminated in a devastating sphere of light, sweeping away everything around it in a final attempt to protect the escape of the innocent. The chaos of battle finally gave way to silence as the wreckage of that titanic confrontation rained down on the devastated land. The once vibrant city was consumed by a relentless rain of light and destruction that swept across the landscape. The energy released by the final sacrifice was overwhelming, incinerating everything in its path in a purifying explosion. Successive shock waves swept across the battlefield, ensuring that nothing remained of that fateful moment. Smoke rose from the smoldering ruins, marking the end of an era and the absolute silence of death. However, far from that inferno, in a quiet and peaceful room, young Song Yunjiang rested deeply. His consciousness slowly returned, bringing him back from the void of non-existence to the world of the living. He sat up abruptly, confused and disoriented, questioning how he was still alive after that catastrophic event. Touching his own face, he noticed something strange. The tactile sensation and the absence of pain did not match his recent memories. A sudden realization ran through his mind as physical reality began to impose itself on his mental confusion. Before the mirror, the reflected image stunned him as he recognized the old Jiwoo Academy school uniform. The overlapping of his veteran memories with the youthful face confirmed the impossible. He had returned to his 18-year-old self. Still in disbelief, he observed the room around him, recognizing every detail of that environment he had long left behind. His eyes landed on the calendar hanging on the wall, and the date marked there confirmed what his mind struggled to accept. Song Yongshang finally understood the magnitude of the miracle that had happened. Fate had given him a second chance. Song Yongshang looked at the sky, questioning his own reality. He realized that he had returned 60 years in time, back to Nanzhou Wuyuan. The city of Yuanding stretched out before him. It was a mid-sized metropolis on the border of the Tiandu Kingdom, just as in his memories. The familiar lights and structures confirmed his location. The city was still intact, oblivious to the dark future he knew. The protagonist's attention was diverted by an announcement. The next match of the 7th class was about to begin in the academy arena. The signal to start the test was given. Immediately, the blades crossed violently, marking the beginning of the combat. In the center of the arena, the pilots began the dispute. Quick and precise movements demonstrated the training they had received. The duel continued with intense exchanges of blows. To Song, that scene of school training seemed distant, but now it was his reality again. The unit of Class 10, a green mecha, was forced to defend itself. The impact of the opposing blow tested the resistance of its armor. In the stands, the students vibrated. Shouts of encouragement echoed as they fervently rooted for the victory of Class 10. Excitement took over the audience. Everyone believed that their representative would emerge victorious from that fierce dispute. Song Yunxiang watched the battle with the analytical gaze of a veteran. He recognized the characteristic green paint of the Kibu Academy students. Beside him, young Lu Yang could not contain his euphoria. It was the first time the student had seen that level of combat so closely. The sound of metal colliding echoed through the arena. The force of the impact generated sparks, highlighting the intensity of the physical confrontation. The machine trembled under the pressure of the attack. The pilot struggled to maintain the integrity of the defense against the continuous onslaught. With a decisive movement, the combatant repelled the attack. The blade slid forcefully, creating an opening for the counterattack. Isahawi Eya Omelos, the green mech pilot, started the offensive, confidently announcing his attack as he advanced. The armor withstood the direct impact, bravely resisting the hail of shots, exploding against the metal. From the stands, one of the students shouted, surprised by the sudden intensity of the combat in the arena. To escape the danger zone, the mech executed a tactical jump, dodging the explosion sweeping the ground. The projectiles missed the target and hit the ground violently, kicking up debris where the machine was seconds before. Taking advantage of the opening in the enemy's defense, the mechanical arm prepared for a decisive counterattack. With the blue energy blade charged, the pilot advanced rapidly, shouting as he closed the distance. The classmates, including Lu Yan, vibrated with emotion, cheering for the success of that risky advance. The fighter unleashed a devastating spinning blow, a special technique designed to end the duel at once. A rival student watched in disbelief, questioning the nature of that move that defied expectations. The clash of forces generated a massive shockwave, shaking the entire structure of the training arena. The force of the blow was overwhelming, throwing the opponent away in a trail of smoke and sparks. The spectators were stunned, barely able to process the speed with which victory was achieved. When the dust settled, the result was undeniable. Class 10 had triumphed, leaving everyone perplexed by the turnaround. However, confusion soon took over the crowd as they realized that the person responsible for the extraordinary feat had disappeared without a trace. The city of Yuanding bathed in the light of dusk, where traditional architecture contrasted with futuristic skyscrapers in the background. The apparent calm, however, hid the agitation of those who needed to move in the shadows. Song Yongshang ran hastily, seeking refuge in the side alleys. He sighed in relief at having escaped the previous confusion in time, aware that remaining exposed would bring unwanted consequences. However, the escape led him to a new problem. The young man tried to follow the instructions he had received, turning left and right, but the urban labyrinth seemed endless, and the promised destination did not appear. Confusion was etched on his face. He stopped for a moment, questioning whether he had misunderstood the directions or if the city was playing a trick on him. Looking up, he realized he was cornered again. The high walls blocked his path, making him question the logic of whoever had designed that tangle of dead ends. Frustration began to grow. Song knew he couldn't keep walking in circles forever. He needed a more direct solution to overcome that architectural obstacle. Determined not to back down, he channeled his inner energy. The young man invoked the power of the star soul to strengthen his body, preparing to jump over the wall blocking his path. His eyes sharpened with total focus. With amplified strength, he propelled himself upwards, determined to overcome the physical barrier in a single movement. However, fate was cruel with his timing. Upon reaching the top and looking down, Song realized too late that the window in front of him revealed an occupied women's locker room. Gravity gave him no chance to correct course. The young man plummeted from the top of the wall, diving straight into the inner courtyard on the other side. The impact on the ground was heavy, kicking up dust around him. Song landed firmly, initially believing that his invasion maneuver had been a perfect technical success, but he had fallen into Heiyang's territory. The 10th class president and astral soul master was there, completely unprepared and vulnerable in her private moment. The intruder's presence did not go unnoticed. By the reflection and the sound, the privacy of the place was violated, immediately alerting those inside. The shock was instantaneous. The girls, upon realizing the man who had appeared out of nowhere, were overcome by an explosive mixture of sudden shame and uncontrollable fury. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Song Yunxiang found himself forced to flee desperately from an armed and furious mob, shouting his innocence as he was hunted like a shameless pervert. Song Yunxiang ran desperately through the corridors, trying to explain while shouting that it was all a terrible accident and that he never intended to invade that place. However, luck was not on his side. The young man braked sharply when he realized with horror that he had cornered himself in a dead end once again. With nowhere to run, he found himself surrounded by the menacing figures blocking the only exit. As they furiously accused him, Song tried to stammer a defense, but panic locked his tongue. The group leader showed no mercy, ordering the others to attack him brutally before handing him over to the dean for final punishment. Their cruel laughter sealed the boy's immediate fate. In Baramare Isichu Aliva Hisit Almahila Meha Init